Welcome to the 26th week after Pentecost. It is Thursday, November the 21st, 2024. This is the Manna at the Tap podcast, where we actively seek the spiritual nourishment our souls crave. The daily lectionary reading we explore together is the manna designed to nurture our spiritual growth and provide the sustenance our souls need. I'm Gloria, your fellow traveler on this spiritual journey, and together we share insights and interpretations from these readings that enrich our spiritual life. I hope as you listen today, you will reflect on what we read yesterday about Solomon and his dedication of the temple. Psalm 132 is one of the 15 Psalms, 120 to 134, called the Psalms of Ascent. Jewish pilgrims sang them as they journeyed up towards Jerusalem to worship at the three great feasts of Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles, as commanded by God. Today's lectionary reading is Psalm 132, verses 1 to 12. And this takes us on the upward journey as pilgrims arrive in Jerusalem, this time for the dedication of the newly built temple that King Solomon, David's son, constructed under the direction of his father. The story began when David swore an oath and vowed to the Lord that he would not rest until he built a house for God. The loosely formed tribes of Israel wanted a king to rule and unite them into a nation, so they chose Saul as their first king. But he refused to, and he made excuses by not obeying Samuel, his spiritual guide. After 2 years of being on the throne, God said, "That's it, I've had enough with Saul." And he sent Samuel to a young man named David, a poet and a shepherd, to replace Saul. But it would be many years before David would become king. He suffered much hardship from Saul and had to run to the wilderness to escape him. Yet David had the opportunity to kill Saul on several occasions because he was a more skillful warrior than Saul. Still, David acknowledged that Saul was God's anointed king, and he considered himself like a dog. When Saul died, David became king, and one of his first acts was to bring the ark, the ancient structure that represented God's presence. He wanted to bring it home to Jerusalem. That first attempt was a disaster, causing the death of a man named Uzzah who touched the ark. David needed to learn the proper protocol, and the next time, about 3 months later, he had the Levites carry the ark on their shoulders and bring it to Jerusalem. This time, there was dancing and celebrating, David and the people, and then he placed the ancient structure in a tent. God was pleased with David's desire to build a permanent home for the ark, but said it would be his son who would construct the temple. David then spent his remaining years accumulating materials from near and far to build the temple. In verses 2 and 5 of Psalm 132, David spoke of the mighty one of Jacob, who also made a vow to the Lord. Now, this happened when Jacob escaped his brother's Esau's anger and he fled from the family compound empty-handed. On that first night, he made a stone into his pillow, and as he slept, he dreamed about God and a ladder to heaven. When he woke from sleep, he thought the Lord was there, but he was unaware of it. So as he was leaving, he poured oil on top of the stone and he called the place Bethel, meaning the house of God. Now, this was the same place where Abraham, Jacob's grandfather, had built an altar for the Lord when he first arrived in the land. Like Jacob, David desired to find a dwelling place, a house for the Lord. And this promise was fulfilled when David brought the ark to Jerusalem. The history of the ark and its survival is interesting as we explore verses 6 to 9 in Psalm 132. Israel lost the ark to the Philistines, but they sent it back to Israelite territory because it brought them bad luck with their gods. The people in that town left it in a field for 20 years. All of this during the time of Samuel. In the wilderness, when the ark and the people moved from place to place, that's when they were with Moses, they were to speak the words of verse 8 over the ark. Arise, Lord, and come to your resting place, you and the ark of your might. In his prayer of dedication for the newly built temple, Solomon closed with the exact words of Moses. Now arise, Lord God, and come to your resting place, you and the ark of your might. Psalm 132 speaks of the fulfillment of King David's oath and the permanent home for the ark. And now, in the closing verses of the lectionary reading, verses 11 and 12, the Lord will make a promise to David. He promised to establish one of David's descendants. And God fulfilled that promise by sending Jesus as the Messiah, born in Bethlehem, of a woman from David's lineage whose name was Mary. Jesus, the son of David, will sit on the throne of his Father forever and ever.